Okay, I'm good.
I am ready.
All right, let's do this. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Darkives. I'm Jamie talking to Leo.
And I'm Leo listening to Jamie.
And this week, I'm going to be talking about the Arctic Balloon Expedition of 1897.
Cool, what's the story all about?
This is about 3 ambitious Swedish men who took off on a daring expedition that ended with a 30-year mystery as to what happened to them. This expedition was the brainchild of a Salomon August Andrée. He was a Swedish engineer and a polar explorer. Now, he first gained interest in hot air balloons during the 1876 World's Fair in Philadelphia. He was able to procure his own balloon in 1893. He would take several journeys on it, just kind of floating over like the Baltic Sea, just going up and looking at the cities. He enjoyed it. He would just use it in his leisure time.
Cruising around his air balloon.
Mm-hmm. After a fellow Swede, Adolf Erik Nordenskjöld, who was actually the first person to sail across the Northeast Passage, suggested that Salomon used a tether balloon to float over the ice to see what else he could see in the Arctic, Salomon got a different idea instead. The next year, in 1895, Salomon met with the Royal Geographical Society and brought his idea to them. He presented this wild and patriotic dream of exploring the North Pole, but not on foot, but by hydrogen balloon, so he could float over the pole in the safety of his basket. In the summer of 1896, Salomon and 2 other men set off for Svalbard in the hopes of catching the south wind and flying to the North Pole. They stayed there waiting for 60 days and hoping for this wind, but it never came, so he finally had to admit defeat. By this time, it was getting close to winter, and he had no intentions of making this journey during the harsh winter months.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Trying to fly over the Arctic in the winter?
You'll freeze your nuts off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Freeze everything off. That wind? Mm-mm. One of the men who was supposed to go on this expedition actually backed out of the next year's attempt over concerns of the steering ability, and he thought the balloon was leaking hydrogen.
2 very good concerns.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really steer hot air balloons, do they? They just go where the wind takes them.
That's going to be a very big problem. Wait and see what happens. The next year, however, Salomon was ready to try again, this time having financial backing from Alfred Nobel, who, yes.
That's the Nobel Prize?
Yes. And the King of Sweden, plus the non-physical backing of the Royal Swedish Academy of Science. Salomon gathered 2 new men and was ready to try again.
Can you explain to me what non-physical backing is? Are they like, yeah, we want you to do this, but we're not officially taking any part of this?
Well, they were like officially taking part, but they weren't like providing anything for it other than just our good word is like, hell yeah.
A couple thumbs up.
Yes,
you got this, bud.
Yeah, so like they weren't providing any financial backing or any like physical support, but they were like, yeah, we support this.
Okay.
Go do it. Aboard the balloon, which they called the Orden, or in English, the Eagle, was 25-year-old photographer Nils Strindberg, 27-year-old engineer Knut Frankel, and 43-year-old Salomon. They took off from the Danes Island on July 11th of 1897 on their way to the North Pole.
All right.
So the construction of this was actually pretty cool. They had the balloon enclosed in almost like a giant box. And when the wind became favorable to them, they started taking down all the wood out of the way. So that way the balloon could catch the wind and go.
Oh, so they kept a big frame around it and just dropped it when they wanted to take off.
Yes.
Cool.
Almost immediately after liftoff, though, a problem arose. So in order to steer the balloon, Andrée had come up with the idea of using drag ropes. Now, this is exactly what it sounds like. He just hung ropes several hundred meters long off the side of the balloon and would use them to drag on the ground in the hopes that it would help steer the balloon.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how a rudder works in the water, you know? It carves out a direction for it to go. So I could see the logic behind it. Drag it on the ground, create friction, drag, and steer the balloon.
Yeah, I mean, that was his game plan. But unfortunately at liftoff, The ropes dragged the balloon down so much that the ropes became tangled, broke off, and now the balloon was completely uncontrollable.
Free flying.
Yeah. The balloon...
Now they can only go up and down, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And the balloon floated up higher than it was supposed to go, and after about an hour or so, it was no longer visible. This was the last time that anyone would see the balloon and the men for the next 33 years.
Okay. I'm going to guess that they're not living in some seaside village somewhere where the balloon landed or something.
Guess you'll have to find out. On May 14th of 1899, so about 2 years after the balloon took off, 2 boys found a letter from the 3 balloon men on the north coast of Iceland. So that's where they found this letter. It said, quote, "Drifting buoy number 7, this buoy thrown from André's balloon July 15th, 1897, 10:55 p.m. Greenwich time, 82 north, 25 east. We are in an altitude of 600 meters. All well."
They're just cruising over Iceland.
Hey, we're just cruising.
That is crazy. They were dropping buoys like messages in a bottle to let people know what was going on.
I read somewhere too that they also had carrier pigeons, but I then proceeded to find no other information about the carrier pigeons. So
the buoys are the best source that we have.
Yeah.
Okay. Not even the pigeons could find them.
I read that, thought about putting it in, saw there was nothing else on it, so that's just a side note here now. Days, weeks, months, and then years passed with no word from the men. Around the world, speculation began on the fate of this journey.
Guessing not good.
Well, the Aberdeen Journal wrote on July 22nd, 1897, that, quote, "It might have reached the pole within 30 hours. In that case, we should have had word of the adventurers by now. We fear the hope of seeing them alive again might be very slight." End quote.
And I'm with you.
But the Grand Junction News reported on January 1st of 1898, so about 6 months after the Aberdeen report, they ran an article that said that the president of the Royal Geographical Society said he didn't place any importance on the fact that the crew had not been heard from. He said, quote, "The fact of the matter was that André had said before he started that he might not be heard from for 2 years. André was a fine, intelligent fellow of magnificent physique. If pluck, intelligence, and physique could help a man through such an undertaking, he would yet be heard from." End quote.
Put a lot of faith in our boy.
I find it very sweet that he was like, yeah, he was fine, he was intelligent, banging bod. If anybody could do it, it's him.
That fine physique ain't gonna help him fly.
Magnificent physique. Get the words right if you're going to be complimenting this man. What no one knew yet, though, was that the expedition hadn't even lasted a week.
Oh no.
I now take you to 1930 with a walrus hunting crew on the Arctic island of Kvitoya. While on the island, they uncover what is left of a small boat. Inside, there's some equipment labeled André's Polar Expedition 1896. Among the discovery are 2 bodies, journals, photographic reels, and more. Like an ice mummy, almost everything had been preserved in this cold weather. The discoveries here would allow the world to finally know what happened to the crew over 30 years ago. The journals tell us the most, so we're going to start at the beginning. The Eagle had stayed floating for only about 2 days. Either the leaking of the hydrogen or being weighed down by moisture finally caused the balloon to crash land.
So it looks like the guy who didn't want to go on this one that was in the original expedition was dead on.
Spot on.
Yep.
Yeah.
They lost their steering.
Mhm.
What they thought was going to be their steering, they lost it almost immediately and probably had a leak and brought him down.
Yep, exactly. So he made the right call. Very much made the right call there. Now this crash landing it appeared to be a very gentle crash landing. No damage to the men, no damage to any of the equipment. Seems like they just kind of
Floated on down.
Yep, exactly. After this, the men loaded up provision onto sledges and began to make their way towards a food depot that they believed was nearby. This was an already established food depot that they thought they were close to, so they were planning on just walking over there and then sending out a message, hanging out there, you know.
Waiting for somebody to come pick them up.
Exactly. The problem was that the men were not at all equipped or ready to be in the Arctic for even a few days. They did not have any fur, no warm clothes, and for some reason they had thrown some of their provisions off the balloon before it crashed. Some people believe that they had thrown some of it off to get the weight out of the balloon.
Try and lighten the balloon and raise back up.
Exactly, yeah. Which, seems to me to be the most logical explanation. Either way, they threw out some of their stuff and they don't have the proper clothes. Originally carrying sleds that weighed about 200 kilograms or 440 pounds, they had meats, cheese, canned foods. Within just a short time frame, they were down to a little under half that weight.
Do we think this is because they couldn't pull the full weight, like they had to ditch stuff?
I think so, yes, because they weren't out there long enough to go through 200 pounds of food. So yeah, I do believe that it is because it was just too much weight. You know, you're battling in the Arctic, snow, wind, elements, and you're trying to pull that much weight.
I can imagine 3 guys trying to pull a sled at, you said 200 kilos?
Mm-hmm.
On wheels and stuff, that's fine, but pulling a sled through the Arctic, going from 200 to 100 kilos seems much more feasible trucking through snow.
Exactly, and
with 3 guys.
Oh, goodness, even 100. That sounds brutal too.
The way you gotta look at it, it's you're dragging a full-grown man instead of dragging 2 guys through the snow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Plus the weight of the sled.
Yep. The men were also carrying a small boat that they would use to cross small patches of water, and this was helpful as they were just wandering across ice drifts. So when you see pictures of polar bears hunting seals, how there's just the giant circles of ice.
As soon as you said that, I just think of polar bears popping up on one sheet of ice, dipping into the water, disappearing, then popping up on another sheet of ice.
Exactly, and that's kind of what these men were on. So the boat was extremely helpful for getting across because remember, they think they're going towards this food depot. The problem was that the ice drifts were making this journey impossible because they were floating the opposite way that the men were intending to go.
Yeah, so they're trying to go one way, and they're drifting the other way.
Yes, the ice is pushing them the other way. After a few weeks, the men had also resorted to hunting polar bears as a means of getting food.
That is a ballsy way to catch food.
Big ballsy way, yeah. Which also leads me to believe that they were just dropping the provisions, because if you had things like, meat, cheese, canned foods, you wouldn't need a polar bear.
Unless it was all too frozen to eat.
Good point, yeah.
Nice warm meat. Sounds good.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it would sound a whole lot better than frozen blocks of cheese. By September, they had decided to build a little makeshift camp on a huge ice floe, which is just the ice circles that we were picturing. But as it neared the island of Kivitoya, it began to break up and they had to go onto the land. But for whatever reason, they weren't able to get their camping supplies. So their camp stuff floated off with the ice.
Sounds like it was a pretty quick situation. Like, oh no, we got to make a break, run, jump.
Mm-hmm. And they had to leave behind essentials, it seems. So September, they set up their little camp. And by October 3rd, they were on the land. Now, Frankel is believed to have died first. Strindberg's last journal entry was on October 5th. And André's last entry was October 7th. So within 4 days of making landfall, they just all abruptly died. They had managed to survive from early to mid-July until October, but as soon as they got onto solid land, they just died.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. They lasted longer on the boat crossing ice sheets.
Yeah.
But as soon as they got to mainland,
they died.
Were they found with any kind of injuries or anything? Or just a couple of popsicle men?
Frankel's body was half buried in the snow and he was the last to be found, but Andre's body was found sitting up against a rock with his journal and his rifle by his side. Hearing that, my guess is just hypothermia.
Yeah, it sounds like he froze to death waiting there for something to eat.
Yeah. There aren't any real explanations for their death, though. Theories? We got plenty of them. They range from the more obvious ones like hypothermia, or I read somewhere that another theory was a polar bear attack, but I think that would be fairly evident.
Yeah, well, there were 3 that set out and only 2 bodies were found.
No, they were all found. 2 were found together, and 1 was found a little bit further away from the other 2. But they were all found.
Okay, so because I thought you just talked about 2 right there.
I did. There wasn't a whole lot of information on the third body's state. I actually couldn't find any
So maybe there is some truth to the polar bear if he's mangled.
Yeah.
Picture the scene.
I'm picturing it.
One of the boys freezes to death. The other 2 still alive.
Yes.
A polar bear from out of nowhere takes one out, starts ripping him to shreds.
Oh, cripes.
The last remaining member
Yeah.
grabs his journal and a rifle, runs off, and puts his back against a rock and waits for the bear and freezes to death. I don't know if that was one of your theories, but that's a fun one for me.
I mean, that covered my 2 basic theories, so you know what? I love. Your storytelling is immaculate.
It's got everything.
It's perfect.
I don't know any of that. I don't know if any of that could have happened. Like,
That's the fun thing about this, though. I gave you 2 theories, you gave me a story. It's beautiful. Some more complex theories, though, are that they had eaten undercooked polar bear meat, which made them sick and killed them, or that they had gotten lead poisoning from improperly canned foods. So those theories are a little bit more on the internal.
but with modern medicine, can't we test that? Or were they found and buried? It's not like the Iceman where we could get into their stomachs.
They were brought back, so they were not kept preserved.
Yeah, they thawed out.
They thawed out and decomposed. So we are not able to test, like we discussed in our ice mummy episodes, they were not kept preserved by the cold. Kind of a bummer, though. I mean, I'm very happy that they were found and returned to their homeland and everything, but if they had stayed preserved, you know, we'd have a lot more solid explanations for what actually happened to them.
Yep.
Either way, for whatever happened to them, the men died within just days of each other and were left there waiting to be found for 33 years. After they were found, the men were returned to Sweden, where they were celebrated as national heroes. This expedition was supposed to be a massive honor for Sweden, and realistically, it still is despite the outcome. Like, this was Sweden's way of getting into, like, the race to the North Pole, and the fact that these men set off on, like, a one-of-a-kind journey expedition to go do it, it was very, very proud for the Swedes at that point. And while we know their fate, we know what happened, I would still say it's a pretty cool honor. Like,
Yeah, that was one of the last unknown frontiers that people were racing to. I think I remember a story of 2 different men racing to get to the... Oh, that's the South Pole?
that is the South Pole.
Okay.
Which, you know what? I will probably be covering in a future episode because that's buck wild and it's very fun. I enjoy some polar expeditions. So we'll definitely cover that one.
Yeah, I know that the North and the South Pole, those are like some of the last uncharted, so harsh that nobody was going there. It's kind of like when we covered Mount Everest, right?
Yeah.
These places that are so hard to get to.
Makes them all the more desired to get to. Today, there is a simple stone memorial where the men were found, and the area is actually now called André. This is just a little bit of a side story, but one of the men who was on the balloon, Nils Strindberg, at the time had a lover back on the mainland. Her name was Anna, and at the time of his leaving, he had a locket with a piece of her hair in it around his neck. He was writing her letters while on the expedition. Like, they were really in love.
A couple of lovebirds.
Yeah. But obviously, he disappeared, and then Anna was forced to move on, and she did. She ended up marrying another man, living a long life, and she died in her late 70s. One of her requests upon her death, however, was to have her heart taken out, cremated separately, and put in the grave with Nils's body.
Well, that's super sweet. Can they do that, though?
They did.
They did?
They
for
did.
sure? 100%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This information just came out recently, like within the past 10, 15 years or so this is coming out. But yeah, as far as we are aware, her heart is buried with him.
That's a cute little ending to a tragic story of 3 guys freezing to death.
Yeah.
Maybe mauled by polar bear. I don't know.
Maybe ate some bad meat.
Maybe got lead poisoning. But for sure, they all died.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Within a matter of a few days of hitting the mainland.
Isn't that crazy?
It is kind of crazy.
That is such a bummer. But thanks to the work of Nils and the Arctic Cold, the photographs were preserved from his photo rolls. I will post some of those on the Instagram. You can see the actual pictures that they took during this expedition.
Very cool. I can't wait to see those.
And this includes pictures of the downed balloon, 2 of the men standing next to a dead polar bear. So
we know they got one.
Yes, we do. I will show you, and I will upload these to the Instagram if you guys want to see some of them as well.
Very cool.
That's the story of the Arctic balloon expedition, though.
Cool little ride.
It was a fun little yarn.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys learned something new today. You guys can follow our socials or send us an email, which we will have linked in the show description.
And as always, the easiest way to support the show is to leave us a rating or a comment.
Yeah, be like our friend Breezy. Breezy on Spotify's making us laugh. We love Breezy.
And with that, we will see you guys next week.
Goodbye.
See you guys. Breezy's got some good stuff. What was his comment last week?
About the funeral for William the Conqueror should have been called the Royal Flush.
Ah, yes.